Yeah, that's very interesting to me. It's like, what do we choose to put on stage, right? All of us as artists who work with these autobiographical materials. And it's also like, I open my life often, you know, like kind of this is, you know, me and my partner and I, like talking about wanting to have kids. We don't have them, like we're
Yeah,
still in the process, we're exploring this, but we're telling you about
yeah,
like
yeah,
inner bigger stuff. And where's the line? And there are lines. There are things that I don't want to share, you know, there are
yeah,
private things. And then I wonder, if I don't share that private thing, does it feel like something's missing?
yeah,
And like,
yeah,
and it takes a while to feel, oh no, this is a complete piece. And
yeah,
you know, and we have
yeah,
to choose our narrative in it. It's
yeah,
not like just all of us kind of thing.
yeah,
And again, each piece, like this, that piece is Unfamiliar. It's called Unfamiliar. Like with Where to Belong, the focus was on my more rounded identity. So it's like, you know, which is nationality, religion, upbringing, as well as being queer. So yeah, I guess focus and narrative say a lot about this stuff, isn't it? Like,
well, how can you justify Unfamiliar? No, I'm joking.
no, I'll let me think. But keep holding it.
You exist.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the reason you might be here, although you still don't exist, so I don't know. But the idea of making this piece, a performance, was to yeah, it was to make the idea of having children as a gay couple possible, and to externalize it, and to assert it, and to explore the fears around it, and to actually have this conversation out loud with other people, and to bring role models into our lives as well, like ask them questions. So that's why we interviewed people. That's why we collated all this material to actually to convince ourselves, but also to then bring it to other people who might be going through a similar journey. And that's, yeah, and that's the power of what we wanted to do. And I think it had a big effect. It's not complete, but you're but if you are real one day, you might appreciate it. It might be a bit of TMI.
Yeah.
But this would be us before you come into our lives. So.
Your show is going to be their archive.
Yes. And I imagine sometimes, you know, like if your child becomes an artist and then you have all this work you've done, and there's so much, if they decide to draw from that, like as well.
Well, I feel like what is my grandchild is not going to make a show about how I made a show about my granddad.
You don't know.
All my efforts focused on someone else's life. I don't know.
I mean, I think because history, like the way we make art, the way we see things, it progresses so much and changes, that the meta of what you've just described sounds quite right within years. For someone to make a show about their grandmother who made a show about their grandfather.
Yeah, that would be fitting. Yeah. That's funny. But I made the show so because of her, because she died, and I was really grieving for her, and I found this was a project that I could put a lot of my self into, which felt close to her, but close to you, but without being too close, you know, kind of to one side. And that it made me realize that I had not really asked many questions about my granddad, and that we hadn't spoken about him. And I think that maybe I also couldn't have made it while she was alive, because I know that she knows everything there is to know about her own life and his life and the stories, and that I would have maybe felt like too much responsibility to tell every kind of truth and detail. And in the absence of both of them, I had a little bit more freedom to choose what to include and what not to include. And so, yeah, I don't know. And now there's a weird function it has of kind of, you know, making his name known, which was never the point of making it. But I don't know, that almost feels like a disservice to her, because I didn't include her story in it very, you know, I don't know.
So did you want to say something to her about that?
No, because I'll cry.
I don't show my family in the best of lights, like a lot in my work, and that's my experience of my family with the themes that I talk about. And if I were to be responsible for how they feel about it, like, I don't know how the work would be honest or valid, or like, that's the point it's making. And it's not making a point about my parents or my brother, or it's making a point, it's bigger than that. It's like other people's parents, other people's like systems and dynamics and boundaries or not boundaries and things. So yeah, I think a lot of these things are mirrors, like for people's lives, rather than just putting. So it depends. Like, it feels yours Rendezvous feels very much it is your grandfather, and it's lovely because it's very honoring someone who was a public person as well, right? I think that's also maybe different. Like, someone who chose to be in the public eye. And
but yeah, it's like, it's also, it's the difference between making a exhibition in a museum or writing a biography and making a performance. Like, nobody says, or making a biopic movie or something where you're not making it to be accurate, to be precise about facts and information. You're making it to create some kind of feeling or evoke an experience. And actually, I don't know, it's also a bit more honest, because nobody curating an exhibition or making a biopic is objective. So you're always going to be putting yourself on it. I think that, kind of owning that gives you a sort of freedom. That's how I reassure myself. I like, every story that's told is subjective, and we've projected ourselves into the bits that we find interesting, and that's all we're ever going to be capable of creating. So we might as well embrace it. And even if there's like a slip of the tongue, or, you know, something makes it into the script that is actually not true, but it felt true to you, and it somehow, that means, it means something to you, and you,
yeah, and it serves that bigger purpose, right? Which
Yeah.
is the telling of that story to get perhaps a message across, or perhaps connect in a different way, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
something. And I think that's what the strength of autobiographies, because we have our own strengths, like of our experience, that we went through something and we can share that because it's very real and personal. It's not like, oh, now do something about that, like, and kind of like.
Yes, and actually, that I feel like that's very important. That for me, picking my own story is, yeah, a way of also alleviating too much worry about that responsibility, because the responsibility of telling someone else's story feels much bigger than telling my own family's.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a little bit of a cheat, or like a, I don't know, I think I often feel like, you know, who am I to do this? And if it's your own story, you think, well, who else is going to do it? You know?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the tricks around this stuff, not tricks, but like personal to my work, is like, I don't mention their names often. Like maybe a grandfather, I'll say his name or something, but otherwise I'll say my mom, my dad, my brother. I don't show their faces personally. Some people show archives of photos and stuff. I just have the idea of them. Yeah, and I reveal enough to put you inside a feeling, like, but I don't reveal enough about them because it's not their story in the end. Like we said, it's a story.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do that. I just go full on names, birthplaces, photos, everything. And practically every time my mum comes to the show, she has some detail to correct me on that she didn't notice last time. And yeah.
And how do they relate? Oh, I have to go in 1 minute, but sorry. Do they enjoy seeing it, like your family?
Yeah. My mom loves it, yeah. I think she just feels very proud, and yeah, if it was me, I don't know if I would like it, but yeah, I think she feels really happy, like it's fitting.
Was there anything
on stage, you know?
She wasn't comfortable with?
Not really. I mean, I interviewed her and we included a bit of the interview, so obviously she hates the sound of her own voice, like everyone does. I did ask her at one point, yeah, she was very happy with it. There's a letter that my granddad wrote to her and my grandma when he knew he was dying, and I asked her if I could use a quote from the end at the end of the show. So that was one thing where I felt like I should definitely check that it's okay to do that. But she was happy with it. But in the end, I took it out because it wasn't the right ending. But no, she was very, very open-minded. So I was lucky.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm just remembering that I do show my mom's face, but she's wearing like a huge sunglass. You can't, like, it's a video of me talking to her, like from my family's flat in Beirut.
And they've never seen either of those shows?
No.
But it's not because of a responsibility you feel of having told the story?
Not really. Like, it is, if I trusted them. Yeah, I think it's protecting myself a little bit because it would be super emotional, and it's a huge deal for them to take a huge plane like trip to kind of come and see it.
Yeah.
I think we've had like a difficult relationship anyway, so we haven't been speaking all the time. So it's like also that. Yeah. It's also finding the right time.
Yeah.
But also I feel a little bit like, I feel like my mom won't appreciate some of the things I say. about her,
Mm.
which the show needs.
Mm.
But
so in a way, it's
a little bit maybe
a gift that you had the physical distance that,
yeah.
that they haven't seen it, or
There's a part of me that is terrified. They'll say, cut that bit now, or like this threat. One of the things is like when Laura sent us the question, it said, how do you pursue the responsibilities, struggles of suing family archive stories in your work instead of using?
you're like, ah!
Exactly.
My,
There's a very like distant, like a part of me that is terrified that they'll sue me. I don't think they will, but
the defamation of character.
yeah.
Going around the world winning all these awards for this show, saying these things about me.
Slander. No, I'm sure they will be very emotional and appreciate lots of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do, go to difficult places because my relationships have been difficult with my family. So in a way, that's why I make these pieces. It's kind of a healing process and to kind of overcome it. And it becomes more than my past experiences of these things. So, but it is tricky, it's true.
Yeah. And I think like with the great and the grand, the reason, one of the conscious reasons I go for grandparents is because it's less, the relationships tend to be less complicated than the ones with parents. And that's just more, slightly less raw for people to talk about. So it's, skipping that step.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to make a show about a great aunt of mine who passed away. But it's just, that's the show I was going to make when I was going to make Where to Belong. It was going to be, she was going to feature in it, and then she just didn't. She just disappeared because other things were more relevant for me and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was too big. And she didn't just show why I wanted to make about her. I mentioned her in one line, like in that show, but it's interesting. But she's always in the back, like on some point she'll come.